Welcome to Maré Sonora Podcast, a weekly show about sailing, conservation, science and photography. I'm your host, Marina, a Brazilian journalist who lives in Italy. Most of the episodes here are recorded in Portuguese, but I also launch some in English and hopefully very soon there will be some in Italian. I hope you like it, and if you enjoy, don't hesitate to share with your friends, family, and also follow us on your favorite podcast app. Well, today I have the pleasure to talk to a couple really dear friends that I was very lucky to meet along the Pacific crossing, actually after crossing the Pacific. We met for the first time in French Polynesia, and then we've been catching up in many, many beautiful islands. And more recently, we actually went to visit them in Grenoble. I don't know if I pronounced the right way. It's a really, really inspiring couple, and I really admire how brave they are going through hard passages, not going through the normal cruising, easy journeys, but they normally choose the hard paths, and they have a very, very cool journey. So the idea is to listen to them a little bit and get inspired by what they have done so far. So welcome to the show, Christine and Yves. I'm very happy to have you on Maré Sonora podcast.
Okay, Marina. So we are here in Grenoble, in the mountains, not close to the sea, and we are very happy to talk to you and to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not able to interview you guys in French. I wish I could, but at least we have one language in common, which is English. Portuguese, yeah, you speak more Portuguese than I do French, for sure.
Okay. So yes, I think we it's better that we talk in English. I mean, if we start talking Portuguese, I mean, it's going to be a joke. So let's go on in English.
Last time we saw each other, before actually meeting in Grenoble a few weeks ago, but last time we saw each other, you guys were living back east towards the Pacific, and we were preparing to go north, back to the tropics in Vanuatu. What has inspired you guys to go east, back to French Polynesia, and then onwards to South America?
Yeah, we can say that when we started this second voyage with a sailing boat, the first idea was to take 2 years off and to go from France to New Zealand. And the first idea was arriving in New Zealand, maybe sail the boat and fly back to France and do something else. And in fact, every time we go a little bit more to the west, we say no, it's not. Maybe we want to do a bit more, but we didn't want to go further west than New Zealand. One of the reasons is that we are not very keen on going to the Indian Ocean. We were there already 40 years ago, and it was not the purpose. The purpose was to go to the Pacific, to the tropical Pacific, to French Polynesia, New Zealand, and the idea was to go also maybe in the high latitudes. It was not planned at the beginning, but then after crossing the Pacific, maybe in the Marquesas, it started that we say, why not going again to the high latitudes like we did 40 years ago? And we had the choice in the Marquesas, should we go north to Alaska or should we go south to South America? And Christine was much more keen on going to South America because Cape Horn is a myth, you see, so we were so to go to Cape Horn when you are in New Zealand. It's better to go east than to go west. That was the reason.
Okay. And you mentioned you being the first trip you were on was 40 years ago. I would like to hear a little bit about this first trip when you first sailed, and could you tell us a little bit about that one?
At that time we were younger and we just finished our studies, and We had the first 1 year trip in the Atlantic and going to the West Indies and back to France. And then we decided to go more than 1 year off. And so we decided to go up until Greenland. And once we spent the summertime in Greenland, one summer in Greenland, we went back to Azores and then Africa, West Africa, and where we stopped for having some work there. And then we met some people who talked us about South Georgia. And so we decided to go to South Georgia from Dakar. And we spent another summer in South Georgia. And after having done that, we stopped again in Africa, but in East Africa, where we stayed 3 years working. And then we went east up to Sri Lanka. And after that time, it was 6 years out of France, and we decided to go back to France and to work.
And what was the name of the previous boat you had?
The name was Shildeg, and Shildeg was the name of the village where in Scotland where Yves worked during 1.5 years in order to earn money for buying or building, being able to build the boat.
And what type of boat was the first one? And then if you can tell a little bit about Oriond, your actual boat, your present boat.
So, I mean, the first boat, Shildeg, was a steel boat. It was 9.5 meters, maybe 32 feet, something like that. Very, rather small, but very strong, but not a very good sailor. And, but she took us around Africa for 6 years, so it was okay. And the second boat is an ovni, and the ovni is there are French aluminium boats, very, very famous, maybe 1,000 of them around the world, and it's barely one harbor where you can go without seeing another one or two ovnis around. And they're very strong boats. They're having a center boat that you can lift to enter very shallow bays, and very strong and boat is very cozy, and it's very easy to sail, and so it's a dream for retired people that want to sail.
I have to say that it's not only a dream for retired people, but I think your boat, Oriond, is absolutely amazing. It's my dream of boat, really. So I have to say that.
Okay, so and you're not retired already, I know.
No, there are a few years more, I think, for me to retire. Maybe like 35 years for me to retire. Yeah, you've been to Antarctica, to the peninsula in the beginning of this year when not many people could travel. Actually, the whole world could not travel. How was it for you to be there?
In fact, we, at the beginning, as we say, we didn't plan to go because, we haven't said yet that we went back from Polynesia to South America, to middle of Chile, and then we went down the Patagonian channels, and we arrived in Puerto William, and maybe it was during this trip that we decided, yes, why not trying to go to Antarctica the following summer. And so it was not planned, as I say, but when we started this second trip to the Southern Ocean, then of course you can make comparison with the first trip, and the first trip was much more difficult than the second one because our boat was not as good. The first one was not as safe, as well equipped, etc. And also there are so many things that are helping the sailor now, like grapevines, like GPS, like furling jib, like iridium that lets you communicating with families, friends, and etc. So the second one was much easier. But the first one, we were 25 or 28 years old, that nothing could happen to us at that time, of course, like everybody at this age. And the second one was a bit more, okay, we were more a bit, aware of our physical limits, maybe, but we never reached them. We never had any difficulties, nor in the ocean, nor neither in the seas or in the anchorage. It was never difficult. Sometimes it was a bit scaring, but never difficult.
Maybe I can add something, Marina. Why we decide to go to Antarctica, and as you said at the beginning, why we were inspired to go in such places. I think the people we meet when we are sailing have a great influence on us. And on the first trip, it was because we met some people in Dakar who talked to us about South Georgia that we decided to go there. And when we were in Chile, going in the Patagonia Channel, I'm sure that the fact we met many people who talked to us about Antarctica, because when you are there, not the majority of sailing boats, but some of them, they go to Antarctica. And I'm sure we have heard sufficient people who talk us about Antarctica, and that may have made influence on us.
Yeah. And Christine, what do you remember about South Georgia when we were there on the first trip? What were your memories related to that, that I believe should be an incredible island? But what could you share with us about that location?
Maybe for me the more important or great pleasure was the animals. Because in this island, a lot of animals are going there or are living there and having their children. And since there was nobody living in this island for a while, these animals are not afraid of a human being. And so we could realize that, and we could approach the animals quite easily. And it could be the birds, like the albatross, or it could be the penguins, or it could be the reindeers, or many animals were so easy to approach and so interesting to observe, because you can observe them when they are very young and then later. And there was also a lot of sea dogs. And I think one thing for me is very impressive in this island are the animals.
Yeah, I do hope I can one day sit back with you and Yves and talk about South Georgia. It's actually on my number one top list of things to do, like dreams to.
I will send you a link to our vintage photos. I mean, all the photos we took 40 years ago. They're on the net, and I will send you a link.
That'll be awesome. If we can I can make sure I put them on the description of the episode so people can actually have a look when we launch this chat. And that'll be super nice. Thank you. That is a great suggestion. And you mentioned, Yves, a few minutes ago, you mentioned about some challenges that you had to deal with in the last trip. You went there in January, if I'm not mistaken, January of this present year, 2021. What do you mean by those challenges that you had to deal with while in Antarctica this year?
No, I didn't say it's not big challenges, but I mean the challenge is of course to cross the Drake. But now crossing the Drake, it's scaring. But in fact, you just have to wait for it's 5 days. It's for 500 miles, so it's 4 days to go through with a 40-footer boat. So you can wait for a good weather window, and then it's going to be okay. And down there, the challenge that we didn't know, the challenge is the ice. Because you've got good anchorage, the wind is not that difficult when you are in the Antarctic. You're south of a bit more south of the depressions are going further north, so the wind is easier. But we didn't know that we would have so many problems with the ice, because the continent is thousands of meters of ice above a few meters of rocks. And so this ice is going to the sea every time the waves are hitting the ground, and especially when you've got big swells and lots of bits of ice. And when I say bits, it's made bits maybe like a house, you see, huh? I mean, several tons bits, and you cannot. I mean, you don't want this to hit your boat. And if you 5 knots and you hit this, you make a hole in your boat, even if it's a steel or aluminium boat. So the ice was a bit of a problem, and also because we were not very used to. I know people, you know people, Marina. When you've been there several times, then you know what is the limit. Our problem was maybe that we didn't know exactly what was our limits and what was the limits of the boat. In some places we were wondering, in some channels down there in the main, there is very famous channels called Le Mer Channel or Neumayer Channel. Then you go through there, and then you see ice all over the place and big blocks, and you don't know if you will be able to go through or not. This for us maybe was a big challenge. Now we know that it's not that difficult, but at the beginning we didn't really know.
And speaking a little bit about the circumstances, the situation, because of COVID, so there was no tourism in Antarctica, there were no cruise ships, those massive vessels going down. What can you tell us about this special situation that you faced, that you experienced, of not having many sailboats or many people in such a special place? How was it for you?
I think mostly we can say that we were very lucky, because it's, I think, very rare to have got this situation, and it happens in 2021, but it will not happen maybe anymore in 10 or 20 years, and it was not like that 20 years ago. So it was really a chance for us to have this situation. But on the other hand, we were only 4 or 5 sailing boats being there at this time. And in my opinion, sometimes it's good to have got other boats. Maybe not many, but having 1 or 2 other sailing boats in the same bay, it may it allow you to do more interesting trek on the land, or even going with your dinghy in another place or in another corner of the bay. And for me, no cruiser was a good thing, but so few sailing boats was maybe less a good thing. I like when there is 1 or 2 other sailing boats doing the same thing as us and being at the same place as the anchorage.
Yeah, I remember you are a super active couple. I get surprised how actually non-stopping you are. I remember when we went hiking a few times, and sometimes I was like, how can they be so strong all the time? I really admire you. It's really cool. And where do you get this energy from?
Mars bars.
No, I will not say that.
I'm paid for that, you know. So I must.
No, for me, it's being afraid of an empty life or an empty day. So, when you are afraid of that, you need to be active. And some people, you can say they are hyperactive. Maybe sometimes we are too hyperactive.
No, and also when you go in these places, man, you know that you're not going to stay long. Okay, I mean, so some other people, some other friends we've got in common, they stay the winter, or they go 5-6 times in the Antarctic. For us, we knew that it would be the first, the only time we would go there. So you got to enjoy it as much as you can, and it's okay. It will be time to sleep or to later in your life. But we didn't do that much when we were in the Antarctic. I mean, we spent 6 weeks down there, and it was cool. We had plenty of time to make it. One of the things which was not really good for us, that so few people were there, is that the land is very dangerous in the Antarctic. If you're at the anchorage, it's okay. You've got your boat is tied with the anchor and 4 ropes to big rocks, so you're completely safe. But when you put the foot on the land, then you've got rocks. As I say, you've got a few rocks, and then up you're on top of the snow and the ice, and it's full of crevasses. It's very rare that you can really walk on the Antarctic without taking a little risk. And it would have been much better if some other people had taken these risks for us and make the trail.
And you've been, I remember you telling me that, because you had 2 more people with you, so you were in 4 altogether on board Orion. You did mention when we were in Grenoble that you had an incident or something happened when you were walking ashore. How was it, Yves?
No, it was a small incident. But the 2 friends, Daniel and François. Daniel is a great mountaineer. He lives in the Alps. He's very used to climbing, to paragliding, to skiing, and he was more or less our guide. And so when it was always him first and making the trail and trying to read the landscape and to see where the crevasses are supposed to be in existence or smaller. And once he was in front of us, also one thing which is not really maybe not many people know that, and we did not know that before, is that it's a winter, it's a summer, and during the summer it's not that cold. I mean, it's maybe up to 5 degrees in the day, or 5, 6, 7 degrees in the day, and then the snow is melting, or the snow is not hard. So every time you're walking, your foot is going down maybe 20 centimeters or 50 centimeters down the soft snow. And so but sometimes it happened to our friends, and it was not half a meter, but it was nearly 1.5 meters, that he had put his foot on a crevasse, and he was going down. Okay, he was lucky, or nothing happened, and he just crawled back and get out of this hole. And then we decided it was okay, and then we came back. You see, you can go to Antarctic being an explorer and with very tough people and very very courageous. But you can go also to the Antarctic being light-minded. And go, and whenever it's a bit too difficult, then we stop and we go back. And for example, after we went down to there are several scientific stations, and one it's called Vernadsky, very, very famous within the sailing world, because they were really welcoming you, and they having a party there is a must. And after we decided, then we will go further south maybe down to the polar circle. And in fact, we started, and after 10, 20 miles, we saw it was a bit too difficult for us because, there was too much ice, too much swell, the anchorages were not safe down there, so we just decided it's enough for us and we turned back. And some other people, we didn't mention Igor already, but Igor was there with his boat named Kotik, he has got much more experience and maybe much more courage. That's it. Normal people, really normal people can go down there.
And Yves, what was the higher latitude you reached on this trip?
65 degrees and something. And the polar circle is, if I remember well, is 67. And we were about 120 miles away from the polar circle. 67, 36.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you about the meeting with Igor. We had the joy to talk to Igor and also with João Paulo in episodes before. I'm afraid they are in Portuguese, even though Igor is fluent in 4 languages as well as João. They both speak many languages, but we did a few episodes with them in Portuguese. And I was meant to ask you, how was meeting with them and how was catching up with them? Because I'm aware you knew his parents before, right? Oleg and Sophie.
Yeah, we in our first trip, we met Oleg and Sophie, and Oleg and Sophie talked a lot with us about South Georgia, and that Oleg and Sophie that took us to South Georgia, and we knew that Oleg and Sophie died one after the other, and that Igor took the boat. And in fact, because of the COVID, we had some difficulties to get to Chile, and in order to try to get the authorization from the local authorities to get down there, we went in touch with Igor, and we talked about a lot about on WhatsApp and mail to see how we can make things, etc. And at the end, we managed to get the authorization, and we came down from Santiago to Puerto William at the same time as Igor's friends, so we went down alongside with Igor's friend, and we took the same plane. And what was a little bit funny is when we arrived at the airport in Puerto William, our boat was on the other side of the bay, but the people there, the Chilean people, they didn't want us to take the normal bus that drives you from the airport to the city, we can say, or to the village. And so Igor took us from the airport, which is very close to the sea, and we went down, crawling between the herbs and the trees with all our luggage, and we had 80 kilos of luggage, something like that. And he took us with his dinghy to our boat. And then we were always in touch with him. By mail, but we didn't meet when we were down in the Antarctic. We met again when we came back to Puerto William, but he went really further down south to, it's called Marguerite Bay, and we stayed further north. So we were at the same places, but not at the same time. And of course, we met again in Puerto William, and we had great times with him. And he's a really nice guy, and he's a bit out of the normal, out of normal. And I hope, I know he's got plenty of huge projects, and I hope he will succeed in making them.
Yeah, one of them is the trip with Beto Pandiani next year. along the Northwest Passage. It's meant to be a very, very cool trip next year on a fairly different boat, on an open catamaran. That'll be interesting to see too. Yeah. I would like to hear you now. We are reaching the final moments of our chat, and I would like to hear a little bit about your Atlantic crossing from Port Williams to the Azores, to the Azores. How was it for you? And I think it was 53 days directly. And I remember you when you sent an email one time, I was asking, "Are you guys stopping in Brazil?" And you said, "No, we're not. We're going straight." Because for those of you who do not know, they used to send the daily report through their satellite phone. Correct me if I'm wrong, even Christine. And for me, it was so cool to receive them every day to see how you were doing. Even though it was French, I used Google a lot. But it was really, really cool to follow along. So I would really like to hear about that passage. How was it?
We started this passage from Puerto William to Azores with 3 other sailing boats having the same trip. And one going to Canary Island, another one going to Azores, and another one going to West Indies. And so it was nice to start with other sailing boats, so it means we have the same good weather forecast. We were only 2 of us, and we had no crew at that time. And each time we were going a bit north, we were happy because we were thinking, we get away from the south latitude, the 40 or 50s latitude, which with sometimes some dangerous sea or some very strong wind. So each time we were having a degree more north, we were quite happy. After the time of the COVID made that we could not stop anywhere except if we were in danger, but we didn't stop, so it lasts 53 days, like you say, Marina. And it's true that this kind of trip is not so an easy trip. You don't have the wind behind you. Most of the time you have the wind not exactly in front, but you have more front wind than back wind. And so the navigation is not so comfortable. And the fact that it lasts 53 days, it makes that, you need to have enough water, enough diesel for the engine, and enough patience toward reaching the city where you are going. And so we were quite happy when we arrived in Azores, in fact. Happy to have done it. And it's quite a long cross, and that's not maybe the best or the cross we liked the best during our navigation, but we had to do it, and so we did it, and we are happy to have done it.
How many miles do you have in your life log so far?
No, I think it's 50,000. For 45 or 50,000 for this for this trip. But it's okay. It's nothing. I'll just tell you a story. When we were in the Azores, we meet a guy. Is alone on his boat, and that's 20, 30 years he's sailing on this boat, and it's just done 1 million miles. You see, so 1 million miles, 7 times around the world. Okay, so different people, different lives.
Where did you say you met
him?
No,
we met him in the Azores. In the Azores. He's called Nicholas, and he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Very tough. I mean, so he's been in the Northwest Passage. He's been in several times in Patagonia. He's been crossing all the oceans in all directions, etc. I'm not sure he's always happy Maybe is always looking for something it will never reach, but is a great sailor.
And I want to say also, Marina, that some people you met on a sailing boat, some of them, they are very happy at sea. Us, okay, we are quite happy at sea, but it's not, the purpose is not to be every time or almost all time at sea. What we like also is to meet people. And when you are at sea, you don't meet anybody. So, okay, it depends what you like.
Yeah, and I was thinking before we finish, there is I'm in doubt about one thing. You mentioned in the first trip you went as far south as South Georgia. Did you actually go to Antarctica as well, or in the first trip the furthest south you went was in the subantarctic island of South Georgia? I'm a bit confused about that.
No, it's South Georgia. We didn't go souther of after South Georgia. But you know when you look at the map, South Georgia is not very far south. It's just a bit. I'm not even sure that I think Cape Horn is a bit more south than South Georgia. But there is one thing which is called the Antarctic Convergence. Not sure of the English word, which means that southern of this convergence, it's really the southern ocean with the icebergs and the strong winds, strong seas, etc. And this this convergence is not a circle. It's making round and round. And South Georgia is what is called a sub-Antarctic island. And the climate in South Georgia is it's really Antarctic climate. When in Cape Horn, in the southern part of South America, it's much more temperate. It's not as cold. It's not as snowing as much snow and ice. You see, this is why very often South Georgia, which is not really far south, it's considered as a subantarctic island.
Yeah, I was wondering that. So it was the first time you went as far south as the peninsulas, the Antarctic Peninsula then?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for the last question, and before I thank you so much for participating once again, what happened in terms of meeting whales when you went down? I remember you in Grenoble again, you mentioned some events regarding whales and stuff. How was it?
You mean whales in the Antarctic? Or whales everywhere?
Yeah, the whales that once I think had made some damage to the hull and...
That was with our first boat.
First trip.
During the first trip, we were it's called the Mozambican Channel. It's between Africa and Madagascar. We were going up, and we hit a whale. What we suppose is that we hit a whale when she was sleeping, or with the baby, or I don't know. And so we heard a big noise during the night. And then so we went out. We saw more or less the back of this animal, but we thought it was finished. But not 1 or 2 minutes later, I mean, the whale came and hit us very hardly with the head, and it was a steel boat and make a bump. I mean, the bump was really the size of a whale head and maybe 20 centimeters deep. Our daughter, she was 2 years old at that time, 1.5 years old at that time. She was just on the other side of the steel, of the 4 millimeter steel hull, you see, and she's maybe one of the only kids who have kissed a whale at this age. And so after we were not really happy when we saw whales. But in the Antarctic, we saw plenty of whales, but they're humpback whales. I mean, they're like cows. I mean, you can. I mean, we didn't did that because we didn't have the chance. But you can touch them, you can swim with them with no problem. But so what we saw what we think is that the first whale that who damaged our boat was a killer whale. And these killer whales are really strange. Of course, I suppose you've heard of all these killer whales attacks that in 2020 and 2021 near Gibraltar near Portugal, near Spain, and really plenty just maybe playing with your boat, and it makes you see like they would be playing with a ball and things like that. So we had the bad luck with this first whale 40 years ago, but okay, no more after. And yeah, that was maybe the only time we were in danger.
Okay. And the last thing I would like to hear from you is where exactly is Oriond? And actually, no, hang on. What is the meaning of Oriond for the listeners who haven't been lucky enough to visit Grenoble and haven't met you? I would like to ask you before the last question, why did you name your second boat Oriond?
Oriond is the name of a small mountain very close to Grenoble. And this mountain, Oriond, is something like 1,600 meters high. And it has got a nice small hut that was used for people who care the animals, like cows or sheep, yeah. And so we used to go there very often with the children, and it was a nice hiking habit that we had with our children, going there and having the night there and then going down on the second day. And so that's why we named our second boat Oriond.
And Oriond is now in Brittany, and we are in mid-October, and within a month we will go back there and take Oriond out of the water and put it in a yard where they really, a special yard where they know a lot about ovnis, and we need to make a real good check. Change the rigging, because that's now 15 years it's the same rigging. Change the rigging, check the centerboard axis, check the rudder, check a lot of things to check, maybe some things to change, and then it's okay. And okay, then the plan is next year. We are finished with a big voyage, but maybe next year we're going to spend a few months in the north, and maybe going up to Norway, and maybe one of our Brazilian friends is going to be crew.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me and Diego literally on board Oriond, both Oriond. Last week, when I realized my health condition is not good at all, when I saw you guys walking so fast, and I was completely dead afterwards. Christine, you sounded like 1,600 meter high. For me, it was like, Jesus, it's more than 2,000 it felt, but it was really, really nice, beautiful landscape. And also, thank you for participating here. It's always very nice to hear you, and very nice and inspiring to have an idea about places you have been. Anyway, in general, it's always nice, very nice to hear you sharing where you have been and your journeys, which is, like I said in the beginning of our chat, not common, not like Facebook cruisers. You're actually completely the opposite. You normally choose tough itineraries, and you guys are really, really inspiring. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Marina. We're very pleased to talk to you. Yeah, that's a pleasure, and of course we liked very much to speak about our trips, and we try to remember our voyage for in South Georgia 40 years ago, and we've got great souvenirs of it. So I know within 40 years, I will really remember very well Antarctica. So that's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you like it, please don't hesitate to share with whoever you think might like it as well. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast app and help us to reach out more people. I see you next week, and until then, fair winds to all of you.